maturing young people for careers in the nuclear industry, combining the affective and cognitive domains to affect human performance in school. My name is Bruce Meffert, and I work at Lynn State Technical College here in beautiful central Missouri. Who am I? So I was a U.S. naval officer on submarines. That's where I got my nuclear training. And then I'll tell you what, when I got done with nuclear training, I decided to take the non-nuclear route for about 5 years of my life. And I was plant superintendent, number 2 in charge of production at a corrugated manufacturing facility of about 115 people. I got kind of a little bit tired of that and went and became a high school science teacher because I really wanted to teach. And then I got the opportunity to come over to Lynn State and become the nuclear technology instructor. And then in a couple of years, I became its program chair. It's been the best job I've had of all the jobs I've had up to this point. While I'm at Lynn State, I've been able to become a certified health physicist and a registered radiation protection technologist. I just kind of throw those in there to let you know that not only do I believe in excellence for my students, I believe in excellence for myself. My biggest challenge really is people. When I was in the nuclear environment, if we followed the procedure, did exactly what the procedure said, and observed and used our knowledge, we got a good product and a good outcome out of our processes. Even at the corrugated manufacturing facility where they didn't really care about quality, I was the quality manager for a while. I was trying so hard to teach these lower level workers that if they just pay attention and they just set their machines and have a standardized procedure and a standardized setting to the machine, they're going to get a standard product. People are much harder to standardize. People, things that human beings think for themselves, to really get people working in a standardized way, we all know is one of the biggest challenges. I want to quickly review what the affective domain is. You've probably all had it as trainers or educators. But the affective domain is not using your cognitive thinking abilities. This is teaching and getting the students or workers so that they truly feel something when they're learning and they truly react down on the feeling level, not just thinking through it, but actually starting to put it into their core belief system. It's usually explained in 5 different levels, the lowest level being receiving. Yep, the student passively gets the information. And of course, if they pay absolutely no attention, there's no learning that can go from the instructor or the school to the student. So this is somebody sitting in a lecture and they're actually awake and paying attention. You know, through experience, if they're just awake and paying attention, they may not be getting very much. So responding, okay, now the student actually participates somehow in the learning process, and you realize that if you put some stimulus out there, they react to it. You can see it in their eyes. You can see that they're thinking, that you can see that they're responding in some way. This too is not exactly a huge long-term learning aspect of learning. We really want to get well above just students responding. We want them to start at least valuing. When students, they start valuing an object, valuing a piece of information that we gave them, at that point, they are starting to really dig in and think and internalize some of this information if they actually put a value to it. Now, you just got to be careful. They're assigning the value, not you. You've got to convince them what value to assign to that piece of information. If they assign a piece of information that is extremely important, we know, to them being successful out in the nuclear industry, they assign a lower value to it, even though they got up to the valuing range of the domain, doesn't mean it's good. We actually got to help them value things the way the industry values them. And then organizing. Students start to put together all the different values and information, and they actually start thinking about it and comparing them to not only what they've learned in the classroom, but they will probably start comparing it to what they know outside the classroom and what they've had so far in their life. This is getting pretty high up there. When you got people not only asking questions, but they're asking questions and asking tough questions to the instructor, saying, what if this? And it's been my experience that, then you really know that you've got them captured and they're really starting to put things together. You may or may not see this organizing in the classroom. You got to be a really good instructor and ask a lot of questions just for every student to actually show you that they're organizing. Even there's some students that may be organizing, but you can't tell it on the outside. I would say if you see organizing, especially in a lecture, that's pretty good. You usually don't see that organizing until you get out, at least in a laboratory setting, and start giving them a lot more time to think through and compare, and just a lot more instructor time to talk to them and stuff, or for them to talk to other groups even. And then finally, characterizing. This is where they start putting all this information and taking it in hook, line, and sinker into their core values and core beliefs. And they're going to start acting on those core values and core beliefs. Obviously, in the nuclear industry, one of the things that we want them to do is to be trustworthy and reliable. We got to have these people trustworthy and reliable to be a nuclear employee. If we, in the 2 years at the college, do not get these students to truly believe that it's important for them to be trustworthy and reliable, it's going to be hard for them to be a good nuclear worker. Characterizing, very, very hard to evaluate. People have values and belief systems that they don't talk about those. And they're not going to prove to you that they really believe what you're saying or not believe what you're saying. So characterizing, as you get higher orders of effective domain, it's a lot harder to evaluate. Now, we take a look at this nuclear uniform curriculum effort that the Nuclear Energy Institute has put together, and I grabbed this right off NEI's website. We're supposed to be developing the next generation workforce. The U.S. industry is working with community colleges to recruit and train students in a standardized way for employment at nuclear utilities. Sounds great. Train. What does train mean? Does train mean know these facts? Just the cognitive? Does it mean the affective also? They're not really putting a lot of information out there. And then they're partnering to attract young adults to the industry and prepare them for higher level training in the nuclear energy field. You know, the industry wants us to attract young people, not just steal some 35, 40, 45-year-old that's already mature, already been through life. They want us to actually reach out to 18 to 25-year-olds and so that they can have a long, prosperous career in nuclear. And the answer to that is yes, that's what they want us to do. But I'll tell you what, these 18 to 25-year-olds are the hardest for us to train. Now we go to the Institute of Nuclear Power Operations, and they say, hey, they're supposed to be promoting the highest levels of safety and reliability, promote excellence in the operation of commercial nuclear power plants. As soon as you start talking about excellence, it's really, really hard to talk about excellence without talking about the affective domain. And so the Institute of Nuclear Power Operations here is saying, hey, we're promoting excellence. As soon as they say that, I believe that they have to get all the workers to be believing that this nuclear safety culture is the right way to go. Quick question. One of our publications that we use here in the Nuclear Uniform Curriculum Program is the ACAD 08006. Now I ask you, is it mostly cognitive or does it have mostly affective objectives? And if it has, you go look at the book and you're going to see it says identify this, that, and the other. Describe. Based on knowledge of interaction mechanics, select, explain. Sounds like a lot of cognitive to me. The closest it gets to any kind of effective is like explain the importance of whatever. Well, now you're starting to say maybe we're starting to get on to the affective, but guess what? There's been many times in my training that somebody said, explain the importance of this, that, or the other. And I knew to get to qualification, I had to have certain words and certain key things, and I told them that, but I didn't believe it. I did not believe that whatever they were asking me about, I didn't believe it was actually important, so I haven't really bought into it. The affective domain really wasn't touched there, even though it may sound like in the ACAD 08006 that maybe there might be a few effective domain objectives. For the most part, they're cognitive. So you could do everything about NUCP right and not deliver, I believe, to the customer what they want. Utility mission statements, all of them talk about enhancing skills and growing careers. None of them talk about maturity. However, many young Americans are not mature enough to go and operate a nuclear power plant. Utility mission statements, when it comes to their HR departments, they're expecting that the entry-level people that come into their utility will be mature. Where's this maturity problem come from? Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm not any kind of psychological expert, sociology expert. I'm just a Joe Schmo here in Central Missouri. But I have a daughter in high school. I taught high school. I look around my society and I say, if these aren't the problems, or they sure don't help. High school assessment. Okay, down at my local high school, the average GPA of the students is 3.4 GPA, the average cum. So you're telling me that the average student is slightly above average, right? Because a B 3.0 is supposed to be above average, so the average student is well above average, getting closer to superior all the time. We obviously have a lack of standards. Do they really think attendance is important to high school or not? High schools are getting tougher with the stick on attendance all the time, not because I don't think that they really care if the student's there or not. They are worried about, do they get state money? Because every day the student shows up from the state, guess what? The high school gets more money. Let's talk a little bit more about this average GPA. I didn't want to put everything on this PowerPoint, but if you want to, go out to Google and go look at what the ACT Corporation has done and compared ACT scores to average GPAs over the last 20 years. Yep, the ACT has stayed pretty constant in its evaluation, and if you take one ACT score in 1991 and you take an ACT score today, you will find that the ACT score, let's say 22 or 20, whatever constant ACT score you see that the 1991 average student had 0.4 GPA less than today's student. So again, let's take a 22 in GPA, maybe the 22 GPA composite in 1991 was a 2.9 GPA graduate. Now that same student has a 3.3 GPA. Society's lack of honesty and integrity. These poor young people don't have a chance, folks. We think that they need to be trustworthy and reliable, but they look at Wall Street. Our students look at that out there and they say, hey, Boy Scouts is telling me to be honest all the time, and my church is telling me to be honest, my school's telling me to be honest, everybody's telling me to be honest. It doesn't hurt if I lie just a little bit here or there. 90% is great. Oh, the students come in and every year and they just think, if I can just get 90% and get an A in this class, that'll be great. And I'm like, well, that's good. 90% in coursework is okay. But then we start talking about attendance and they think, oh yeah, 90% is pretty good. And I go, 90% in the workforce is terrible. On an average work year of 250 working days, that means at 90% attendance, you'd be missing 25 work days a year. You would get fired for that. That's terrible. Even 95%, you would get fired. When it comes to attendance and several other things, for example, running a nuclear power plant, we run it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 99.9% of the time us running that nuclear reactor safe is not safe enough. And they just cannot quite grasp that they have to do everything right 100% of the time. They also don't understand black and white. I told you to do this, you didn't do this, here's the consequences. They also think there's many ways to skin the cat. If I don't quite make it this way, there's got to be another way. We all know that there's no curving of grades in the NUC program, and there's no extra credit. And you've all seen that. A student says, oh, I'm not making the grade that I want in nuclear. What can I do? What kind of extra credit? And we all have to tell them, there's nothing. You've got to increase your score. Just happened to me a couple days ago. Right now it's August 31st, and we just started classes, and a student got 23% on the second quiz. And this student was asking me, how does anybody ever make it through this program if you're failing everybody out? The second quiz, 5 people out of the 22 passed the quiz. I say, because you're immature, you don't know how to study, and you haven't been studying. You'll start studying, and you'll start doing better on the quizzes. I'm not going to change, but you are. Okay? And in nuclear, of course, we know we must follow the procedure. We can't just say, my way's best. Let's go back and do a little history then. Long, long, long ago, long before there was an NUCP and NEI got involved in all this, it was May 2004, and Lynn State Technical College started its Nuclear Technology Associates Applied Science program. The nuclear industry requested that Lynn State set up a program to train and filter individuals in the nuclear industry. Remember that word filter as we go along. The most pressing issue in the industry in 2004 was the dismal math skills of its entry-level employees. There were some entry-level initial training programs for radiation protection technicians and operators where they were hiring high school graduates, and they were hiring students that had community college degrees. 50% of the students couldn't do the math to make it through the initial training program, so they were actually having to get rid of people out of initial training programs. We classed up in August of 2004 with 8 Lynn State nuclear students starting the program. By October 2004, only 3 were left. And so I had 3 out of 8. I think I did some filtering there. But you can't continue to bring in people and get rid of 70-75% of them. And therefore, when we think about this filtering, we need to make sure that we have multiple filters here in place. So what do I mean by filter? Filter. Google Dictionary says to pass a liquid, gas, light, or sound through a device to remove unwanted material. So when the industry is telling me filter, we all think of a filter. But what, of course, in the case of these people programs, these NUCP programs, the devices should be the program and the instructors. Now, notice I said program and the instructors. Probably at first you'd think if I was building a program to filter students, you'd think, okay, I'm setting up procedures and program and everything, and I am. Different rules, different standards, but the instructors are incredibly important. They have to effectively be believing that at Lynn State we're wanting to give an excellent product to the industry, and they have to realize that they are filters along with the program. And I'll tell you what, if the instructors don't believe that they're filters, if the instructors do not believe in their core that it's all right to fail out students, it's all right to give students bad grades, and to give them both positive and negative feedback to make them better, it doesn't matter what kind of program you have, it's not going to happen. So each one of you have to do some filtering. The unwanted material can be either undesirable characteristics of a particular student that's making it through the program, or I'm going to say also undesirable students. There are students out there, I don't care how much work you put into them, they should not be going to the nuclear work. We do need people to do things other than getting paid so much to be in the nuclear industry. And so if your program is not truly getting rid of students, if you have 100% retention of the people that come into your program, I would really be wondering, is your program worth the salt? People should be failing out of your program because nuclear standards are incredibly high. When we got all these filters, we should place these filters from a coarse to a fine filter in series to obtain the purest output, just like we do at the plant, right? Your first filter is maybe on the hundreds of micron level, and then you work it down to where we get down into the thousandths of a micron level to obtain the purest output. What are some of these coarse filters? You need to have entrance requirements on the program. Remember, whenever I had 8 students actually start the program and only 3 made it to October, that's because in those first few years here at Lynn State, they didn't allow me to have that coarse filter that checked for their math skills or any kind of aptitude test. I was given this job. I talked to Lynn State right away in 2004, okay, what are going to be the entrance requirements for this program? And they said, we've already started recruiting for you. We can't change anything. Therefore, it's open enrollment. Anybody who wants to come off the street that's breathing can get into your program. I had some pretty poor students that first year. Then the second year comes along. 2005. And so I look in the process and how do you put filters on your program and how do you get some? And my boss says, your program's not filled. You're way from filled. We do not want to put any filters on your program. Sorry, I'm not putting any filters on the program because I need a certain number of enrollment to get into your classes. And I told my boss, if you don't put filters on my program, the program's going to filter them out. And they say, we'll take that risk. And the next year, same thing happened. So the first 3 years, we had nothing really to filter out these students until finally I convinced my nuclear industry to talk to Lynn State and say, look, we've got to have some sort of filters. And we started making a certain math requirement. And the problem we found there was a lot of our community colleges do not have standards. And so somebody could make it through a math class with an A or a B with a D or an F knowledge if they put in enough work, did enough homework, the instructor liked them, and all kinds of things. So then I had students who may have even gotten through college algebra and they'd fail out of my nuclear math course right away. We had to find something that was truly standardized as a filter, and at Lynn State we use the American College Test as our filter. Many of you have a filter. You go ahead and use the Edison Electric Test, MAWS, PAWS, or whatever. That's great. We need to have some sort of filter. We're actually at Lynn State considering and thinking about, is there any other kind of test that we could get some sort of objective score on based on this motivation and maturity? And we're actually trying to go out there and look at it, look at psychological studies and everything, because we still have students that are incredibly bright, make it past the ACT, come in, and they're just not motivated to learn the material. I understand that as an instructor, I have, I have some responsibility in getting them motivated. There are some people, especially in the state of Missouri. The state of Missouri has something called an A+ program, that if you get at least a 2.5 in high school and you meet some attendance requirements, that you are given 2 years of school as long as you keep at least a 2.5 GPA in college. So you can go to any Missouri 2-year school for free for 2 years, tuition fees paid for. So we have people that are highly unmotivated just going, oh, guess I better use my A+ scholarship. And hey, this nuclear sounds good. I just barely made the ACT requirements. They roll in and they have no intent of studying outside the classroom whatsoever. And we will just sit there and fail them out until, and some of these people then get Pell Grants and things, and they'll sit there and they'll fail out. And if you're failing people out, it takes a very long time for some of these scholarships and Pell Grants and stuff to finally give up so that these people do not have money to come. So at that point, we do invoke some special procedures where we can get rid of the students based on their poor performance. They really came here with zero motivation. Is there a way that we can test and see a motivation? Now, please note that when the industry identified their math problem back in 2004 with their entry-level employees and talked to Lynn State, what we found out was the math problem is only a symptom of the real core issue, and that is lack of maturity. The students in high school weren't mature enough to study their own math, to know it forever. Some of these people came to the power plant talking, and they didn't even want to study outside the classroom, though their job depended on it. And so the industry was really hiring not only people with a math problem, they were hiring people that were immature also. How do you fight this lack of maturity issues? You can rarely change behaviors with the cognitive domain instruction. Just telling people this is the way it is, just telling people that 2 + 2 = 4 does not get people changed normally. Normally, to truly change people's actions, we must hit them with the higher orders of the affective domain in teaching. Another course filter. So we're talking about those course filters. When I'm talking about course filters, I'm thinking this is the stuff that gets rid of people. The worst thing that I can do is send somebody to industry that will not attend and come all the time. I think every last one of our NUC programs should have some sort of stringent minimum attendance requirement, and they got to come to class on time. And if you're going to track whether somebody's on time or not, you need to have some sort of standard, and the best standard is the atomic clock. So we got several atomic clocks at Lynn State in the nuclear classroom, and if you're 1 second late, you're 1 second late. We're not going to look the other way. We want you to start to get like nuclear people who are actually coming on time, coming early to work 15 minutes, coming early to training to make sure they're on time. So this lowers their academic grade if they have a lack of attendance, and it doesn't take very long. The penalties are pretty stiff that they can fail out very easily in the first semester. So really introducing students the importance of on-time attendance to nuclear training. My question is this rule alone, is it actually hitting the affective domain? I don't really think so. I have a lot of students that respect it, as in they do it, but I don't think I'm necessarily making them believe that it's important to come to training on time. Why do I know that? Because I'll have students for a whole year, send them off to the nuclear companies for an internship, and the students will come back, they'll write on their internship reports, they'll come back and talk to me and go, "You weren't kidding about this attendance to training. People will run you over if all of a sudden they're late. They're going to get to that training on time. They're scared to not make it at the nuclear power plants training on time." And I said, "Yes, I know. And that's why we have it there. But if they're questioning, if they have to go out there and see it in industry to start to really believe it, I don't think I've hit their effective domain." So now I'm going to move on to, I think, what we call our fine filters, okay? Our maturity growth activities, or fine filters. You know, this is when you start applying the filter. You've gone through the course filters. You got pretty usable material here in the students. We're not needing to necessarily throw people out anymore. We just have to start changing behaviors and helping them to mature. And I would say that about 30% of my instructor's time is built around working on these fine filters with the students and changing how they behave and how they perform. And it's a huge investment. First of all, of course, we talk to them before they ever get into the program, an hour and a half briefing, and we tell them verbally and in writing, and we make them sign that they understand this industry standards of performance and integrity, that nuclear is truly different. But we're also in that 1.5 hour briefing. Good job in choosing Lynn State to come here. Good job, you're choosing one of the best industries to come into and trying to catch into them the effective domain where they actually have some pride in coming to Lynn State. I will have 40 to 60 new people every year. The requirement is 1 week or less. You learn those people, you learn those faces, and you can call them by name after that. That makes a huge difference in the instructor-student relationship. The instructor knows me. He watches me. I'm not just one of these people in a crowd of 200 lecture hall. And I really think that's hitting on that affective domain. Right away, they have to dress like a nuke. They've got to put on a lanyard, and on that lanyard is the Institute of Nuclear Power Operations Fundamental and Conditional Human Performance Error Prevention Tools. It's printed there. We practice it in the classroom and lab. They've got to have those to get into all the nuclear classrooms. Definitely their laboratories. If they show up to laboratory and they don't have that lanyard on, they got to go home, get that lanyard, because where are you going to hang your pen? Where are you going to hang your thermoluminescent or optically stimulated luminescent dosimeter? We're going through the classroom. Whether a student makes a mistake based on human performance or the instructor, I'm making mistakes in the classroom. My other instructors make mistakes in the classroom. When we make a mistake, we time out, take a little bit, pull out all our cards off our chest and say, how prevented that error? At first, it's a kind of a lecture when they're brand new freshmen, but by the time we get into it, 6-8 weeks, we start saying, okay, you tell us, how could we have prevented that error? You look at the cards and you tell us how we could have done that. That's obviously cognitive, but I think it's a little bit affective, because I think wearing that lanyard for 2 years straight will make you feel different. There is no one else on this campus in central Missouri, in Mexico, Missouri, no one else is wearing a lanyard, especially no other college students. The girls think of the guys wearing, or vice versa. I don't know if they think it's cool or if they don't think it's cool, but you definitely are tagged as different because my students are walking around all over campus. From 200 yards away, you can say, well, there's a nuclear student. They almost have to buy into, at least it's not embarrassing. If not, there's a little bit of pride to having that lanyard on. Direct unfiltered feedback early on and often. Feedback, of course, is important. We give them quizzes, we give them tests and everything, but I think there's importance to actually pulling them in, looking them in the eye early on and often, and tell them what you think of them. 5-6 weeks into the new semester with the new cohort of freshmen, I'll bring them in 5 minutes. Okay, everyone has 5 minutes with the department chair. I look them right in the eye and say, you know what? You were lazy the other day on this or that. You're a loner. You know, you got to integrate into the team. In nuclear, we're all about teams, and we're not about loners. We can't have that. Okay, you are on target. Good job, positive and negative. But the main thing is straight shooting, going straight for that effective. Is it risky? Sure. I could make a student mad and they might leave. It hasn't happened yet. I haven't made anybody in 8 years so mad from that they left. And then we've talked about want to be here and what's going to take to make you not lazy, and we go on with life and have a little counseling session. Examinations and all your lab activities and stuff, you can design a lot of these things that also helps these students mature and helps them to lean towards that human performance. One of my favorite things is special method multiple choice. Circle all answers apply. For every one you get right, you get 1 point. But if you circle something that's incorrect, you get a -1 point. So there's positive and negative points here. And this really matures a student when they start realizing they can't just guess and circle answers, because if they're guessing and circle answers, they're going to possibly get less points, and they could also start to accumulate negative points. One thing is cognitively, the students study harder for this test because they know they really got to know cold what is what. Then it also helps mature them, because the students, if they get to a point and they read one of those answers and says, you know what, that sounds right, but I'm not sure of it. They learn really quickly that don't circle that answer, because if you don't circle the answer, yes, you don't get the positive point if it was right, but if it's wrong, it's going to hurt your score even worse by circling it. It's better to circle just the things you know, but if you circle that third one that you think's right, yeah, there's a gamble you might get 3, but if you're wrong, you only get 1 right. Most students find that in the first 2 or 3 tests with these special method multiple choice, that their biggest issue is that they're risk takers, and of course in human performance we're trying to teach them stop when unsure. The scores come up quite a bit and they learn a quick lesson in not being risky. Then task performance evaluations. You got to do these. If you don't do these and the graduate goes out there, they just can't understand that I have to perform a task perfectly or I fail completely. They don't understand that concept of one little thing missed and you're not qualified. And you have to go back and get trained again and got to go through the whole test again to get that qualification. So my instructor's doing these task performance evaluations. It's intensive, it's one-on-one, it's costly, but it's very important to mature these students to get them ready for industry. Otherwise, they're going to be flailing out there. We thought we were doing a great job here at Lynn State until one of our students went out to internship and they were going through their task performance evaluation on internship. The company failed the student on the TPE. And the student went, what do you mean? I know I did that absolutely positively right. And the instructor said, yes, academically, by the job of radiation protection, you did it perfectly. But I did not see you take 2 before you started the job and get aware of your surroundings. So they missed the human performance and they failed the whole TP. And we've all seen that happen in industry, but we were not pushing human performance enough in our task performance evaluations here at Lynn State. So we had to go back and look at the task performance evaluation form, try again. Paper and oral presentation length. All of us colleges have a requirement, the soft skills requirement that's not in the nuclear uniform curriculum guide. You're not going to find in ACAD 08006 that the student shall be able to write properly and all that stuff, but we all know it's incredibly important. What we can do to help our students understand the intensity of nuclear is that if they don't make the length requirement, just give them a 0. I'm not saying a length requirement saying some sort of incredibly narrow band. I'm just meant to make sure they understand what I mean by length. So I tell them what text is, and it's not graphs, it's not this, that, and the other. But they got to give me 3 full pages of text to 5 full pages of text on a paper. 3 to 5. Writing a report to 3 to 5 pages, we tell the student 3 full pages, 5 full pages. And I'll have students not do it because they don't understand requirements. They don't understand that when we tell them to do something, we mean it. And remember that we're representing our industry where the NRC doesn't grade us on how close we come to the requirement. That really wakes students up. Impromptu training led by students. I love to do this. You just rolling right along in class and you just stop everything. You say, okay, Johnny, please explain to the class today what Compton scattering is and why it's important to a radiation protection technician. The students are used to that. You know, they think they're being picked on. I'm not picking on anybody. I evenly pick on everybody. I'm an equal opportunity annoyer teacher. But after a while, it starts to get onto students' pride that, hey, I need to be ready for that. I don't really want to be embarrassed in front of everybody in the classroom. And they start studying more. And when they do a halfway decent job at explaining this, it doesn't have to be perfect, but when they get done with doing a halfway decent job, I say, thank you very much, Johnny. That was good job. Let me just add a little bit to that, blah, blah, blah. They feel good and the class feels good that they were represented well. Now, I never tear them up in front of everybody. Of course, I don't go incredibly negative. That would be counterproductive. Just the embarrassment of not being able to answer that question is good enough to make them start to hit their core. Do I really want to be a part of this class? Do I want to keep up with the material in this class? When it comes to laboratory and you look at these high-performing high school students and first-year college students, they're all about getting it done. One of the reasons they got good grades in high school probably was because when given an assignment, they got it done. They didn't always do it to quality, but they got it done. That's not the way we do nuclear, right? We don't slam through a procedure and go, hope that works, hurry up, and if it doesn't, we'll just do the procedure over again. We really see this in our first electricity lab, their first semester. They want to go through the computer-based training, and they just don't seem to care when that computer says, wrong answer, wrong answer, wrong. This is not the way you go through this lab. Let's spend a little more time. Let's look at that lanyard and see, can we look at this problem you're getting ready to do, and can we consider what the worst thing that can happen here if you're wrong? Can you identify possible errors that you might make here and start getting them to look at those human performance error prevention tools before they slam through this laboratory assignment? The instructor is teaching them not only procedural adherence, they're teaching them in those hold points, okay, what did you see here? And what did you learn? And explain to me what happened. Finally, we got to give real discipline for a lack of maturity or integrity. We cannot fart around with these people and let them slip through the program and get out there in industry. For example, attendance, it has some pretty strict attendance policies. If you got problems, you might accumulate minus 10%, 20% off your entire semester grade. I've had them as high as 25%. And academically, some student has a B in a course. Once I put on the minus 25% of that B, they got below the 60% and they failed the course. You mean I actually was making an 83%, but I failed the course because of my attendance issues. And I don't have a lot of sympathy for that because, again, we know that we can have an incredibly bright employee, but if they cannot make it to work on time, not a valuable employee. Plagiarism. Do not tolerate plagiarism. People know when they plagiarize. They know when they cut and paste stuff and it's not their own words. And if you find that, you just got to eradicate it and say, we don't put up with that. And at least fail them in the entire course is what I would do. I would not fail them just on a paper. Fail them on the entire course so they at least have to take a course over. And if they do it a couple times in the program, we throw them out. We can have continuous improvement here. We have continuous improvement, and we're never going to have it perfect. Our story is May 2012. We had a falsification of documents here at Lynn State. We had 2 students, 3 days prior to them finishing their graduating semesters, and they falsified some electricity lab documents saying that they did an electricity lab. They signed the electronics instructor's name to the document saying they completed it. And of course, the electronics instructor seems to know his own signature and pull him in, and of course it was a falsification, and we threw him out of the program. If I have not changed these people through all this stuff that we do, if we have not changed their affective and down to the core that they know that's wrong, they cannot think clearly and think, maybe we should get some help. Maybe we're behind in lab. Maybe we should ask for extension. Maybe we should just take zeros on these labs. It turned out, by the way, if they would have just taken zeros on the labs they didn't complete, the rest of the labs in the semester, they could have passed the course and made it and got graduated. I don't know if we would have granted them an extension on the semester or not. I can't look back and tell you we would or wouldn't have, but it's always possible. They could have at least come to us as the instructors and said, just like you would a supervisor, and say, hey, I can't quite get this all done. What are my options? We might have considered giving them an incomplete and giving them another 6 weeks to finish the laboratories. I don't know. We might have, but they decided to do what they knew was wrong, falsify those documents. We did what we knew we had to do by 10 CFR 50, and we threw them out of the program. Documented, plenty of people know it in our records office that when they go out and they try to get nuclear employment, one of them actually has already tried to do that, went out to try to get nuclear employment. They come across Lynn State's this falsification of documents, and they couldn't get into the nuclear power industry. So conclusions. Society has given us mostly immature young people to train and member. It is not like it was 20, 30 years ago when either we took more mature students out of high schools, or B, we took them out of that Navy nuke program. So not only did they go to probably a little more mature high school, people were more mature 30 years ago, but then they went through the Navy, they matured even more. We are now working with an incredibly raw product when they come out of high schools at 18 years old. Colleges, we have a responsibility not only just to instruct the cognitive and say, this is what Compton scattering is, this is what fission is, know it. We must change the student's behavior and culture prior to the student graduating and going into the nuclear field. An intelligent 4.0 student is not valuable to industry if he or she is not mature enough to regularly attend work with proper attitude towards nuclear safety. It takes much additional work on the top of part of a college nuclear instructor to mature tomorrow's workforce. Just presenting excellent training material to the students in the nuclear classroom lab is not enough. Behaviors must be evaluated and guided by the instructor. I hope today's training has been helpful to you. I just implore you to go the extra mile, do the extra things, continue to talk with the other nuclear instructors. The best thing that's happened to this Lynn State program is in 2004, it was a Bruce Meffert program. In 2005, all the way till 2008, this program was a Bruce Meffert program, and it was completely based on what I thought. Once I started getting more instructors growing and getting more nuclear instructors in, sitting down and talking to all those instructors and starting to put together the procedures that will help mature these people to go into the nuclear field. Keep talking, keep that continuous improvement, keep industry involved, and talking to them, and you'll make a big impact, but continue to give the industry a high quality product. Thank you very much for your attention.